Thanks to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Will the next Monster Hunter game keep wirebugs or remove them? With the final title update on the way, we're presented with this simple question that might not have such a simple answer. So let's go through the positives and negatives of both options to decide whether or not wirebugs should, or even will, return in the next Monster Hunter game. Customization is one of my favorite aspects of games, and after doing the math for wirebugs, they allow for 462 different options with switch skills included. That's almost as many champions as you can play as in Raid Shadow Legends. That number being 650, by the way. And that's not even getting into the team combinations or customizations for those 650 different champions. If we take that into consideration, there's a unique way to play that fits literally anyone's playstyle. But that's just one of the three main reasons you'd play this game. Not only are there effectively infinite ways to play, but the number only goes up with each passing month. See, Raid updates monthly by adding even more champions and more content. This creates something to look forward to every single month, creating even more of a reason to play. But let's talk about the third and possibly most important reason you should play Raid. The game is free to download. You can jump in at any time at no cost to you. And now is a great time to do just that since there's a Valentine's Day event going on until the 14th of March. To check it out, just download Raid from the link in the description or pinned comment, copy your player ID, and go to raidlovequest.plarium.com. Once you get there, just enter your player ID to access the quest. But that's not all. If you play the Valentine's theme minigames, you get a chance to win prizes both in-game and in real life, including a Valentine's Day champion and Amazon gift cards worth up to $1,000. But even if you're not a new player, you can still get Valentine's Day gifts through using the promo code STValentine23. Plus, if you scan the QR code or click the link in the description or pinned comment, you can get a free epic champion, Kellen the Shrike, and some other useful stuff. So do yourself a favor, click the link below or scan the QR code on screen to join the over 80 million people playing this game for a reason. So let's start with the positives of reintroducing wirebugs. Wirebugs do something brilliant that I've only seen a few other games do, and it all revolves around this. So when you use a wirebug, you lose access to it for a bit and it goes on cooldown. But it's not just when you use them to fly around. Wirebugs also deplete when you do this, this, and this. Basically, anytime you see those iconic light blue wires around you, you probably just used a wirebug. All of these actions, be they offensive or defensive, use the same resource. And if you've played something like Hollow Knight, you might immediately realize why this is such a clever system. Let me explain. At a very basic level, wirebugs do one of two things. They either prevent you from taking damage or allow you to deal more damage. Both of these are executed in dozens of different ways. For example, we can look at the Charge Blade's counter peak performance Silkbind skill. This move uses one wirebug to block basically anything and convert that attack into a charge for your axe. This move is defensive and can be used to avoid attacks that your normal roll wouldn't have allowed you to escape from. Most weapons have these counters or evasive moves to get you out of tight spots, but wirebugs can be used offensively as well. You've got skills like the soaring kick that see the hunter launch themselves at the monster before bouncing off the subscribe button to make sure they don't miss a video, then finally finishing with a downward slash to deal tremendous damage. However, like I mentioned earlier, these all use the same resource, so now there's a risk reward that you have to balance. I used the example of the soaring kick earlier because of the cooldown on that attack. It takes about 30 seconds, and for every single one of those seconds, you're not able to access the wirebug that you just used. This is why having just 2 wirebugs is so important. Because you only have 2, you need to carefully decide how much you're willing to risk for that damage increase. If you've played this game a lot, I'm sure you have your own stories of this, but sometimes you'll go for that high cooldown attack only to get caught with a move that you have to wirefall right after, or maybe a move that you could have countered if you had a wirebug left. See, wirebugs add a ton of customization and a totally new layer to the already masterful combat of Monster Hunter, but it's this risk-reward system that really holds it all together. It adds a level of player expression that makes it so even if you're using the exact same weapon with the exact same set and the exact same skills, you can still play in a totally different way from someone else. This is why I love wirebugs so much. The combat is expressive and the risk is determined by you. If you want to play it safe and stick with defensive skills, only using wirebugs when absolutely necessary, you can do that. Equally, you can go all out with your aggression knowing full well that you may not be able to dodge the monster's next attack. But maybe that doesn't matter to you because you're a crazy switch axe main who knows that the monster can't attack if it's already dead. And of course, you can't forget the traversal that wirebugs allow for. The ability to fly around the map isn't just cool, but it's convenient as well, since now you spend less time running around and more time actually fighting the monster. With all of that said, this system isn't perfect by any means. Let's look at the other side of the coin. Is there any reason we shouldn't bring wirebugs back? The 3D action genre isn't exactly scarce in terms of games. There are literally thousands of them out there, but Monster Hunter is in a class of its own. That's the reason I fell in love with the series in the first place. It just feels different. I think the secret of this is the very deliberate combat of the games. It was the first game I played where you really had to think about every move you threw out. You couldn't just swing wildly and fly all over the place. It was grounded and almost tactical in how you approached these monsters. It was that methodical approach to combat that made it easy to spend thousands of hours in this series just learning and mastering your favorite weapon, studying all of its strengths and weaknesses, figuring out the best strategies to take down a monster, and then doing it all again when you switch to a new weapon. There's something immensely satisfying about thinking 2 steps ahead, almost being able to see an attack before it comes out, and then perfectly positioning yourself to counter it. This is what Monster Hunter was all about to me, and it still is to a degree. That spirit of seeing 2 steps ahead isn't lost in Rise by any means, and the game is still undeniably one of the best games I've ever played, but it's just a bit different. The wirebugs make for an experience that's faster and more dynamic than Monster Hunter has ever been, and honestly I love it. But when I go back to play older games in the series, I'm reminded of that deliberate style that made the series so special in the first place. So with the positives and negatives laid out, should wirebugs return? This is a really hard question because half of me loves Rise and wants more combat like this, while the other half loves pre-Rise games that focused more on a slow and methodical style. If wirebugs were to return in World 2, they could be a toned down version of what they were in Rise. Maybe you can only use wirebugs for silkbind skills, and those silkbind skills are toned down a bit to make the game a bit slower than it was before. But then again, maybe you just cut wirebugs out entirely, leaving them in the portable line and keeping the numbered games more grounded. It's what they've always done in the past, so I wouldn't exactly be upset if this was the route that Capcom went down. If you ask me, and I truly could go either way on this, but I personally would want wirebugs to return, just scaled back a bit. If I designed World 2, it would look something like this. You could use wirebugs as a traversal mechanic, but once you get to a monster, they get scared and fly away or something. Then, in the fight itself, you have access to some of the more tame silkbind skills that have less to do with mobility and more with damage and utility. But regardless of what Capcom chooses to do, there isn't really a bad option here. Whichever path they go down, I'm confident we'll end up with something spectacular. But when it comes to Sunbreak, Capcom may have gone too far. Check out this video to find out why.